You are now tuned in to the Gifted Gab.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to 1K Convos on the Gifted Gab. I had a special guest today, Andrew Parker. You guys may have seen him on the Gifted Gab before. We got into a lot of cool topics and important topics. You know, we talked about, what did we talk about, man?
Talk about the Black Teachers Association of Alberta. What's up, family? Talk about the Pride of the Northside, August 13, 14, 2022. And also the state of the culture, man, in the city of Edmonton, Alberta, and Canada.
You guys heard it here first. It's going to be a great episode, and I hope you guys enjoy it.
Love.
One and two, baby. Just making sure. I just make sure, guys. We're going to start right now. Start on me, and then... You ready?
Yes, sir.
Let's do it. We're here, man. We're here. It took a little while, a little longer setup than usual. But we made it. We made it. Appreciate you being here, man. It's your second time on the Gifted Gab.
It's Godfather Part 2, man. They say the Part 2 is always better than Part 1, so let's make it memorable, man.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, you've been doing a lot of big things since the last time we spoke. The Black Teachers Association's popping. A lot of work, you know, with the city and the schools and getting things just off the ground. And we got Pride of the Northside back again after a 2-year hiatus.
Yeah. It's been a busy time, brother. Very busy. BTA has taken off. Got to give a shout out to the family in Calgary. Matt Sire. He's been instrumental in the work that we've been doing, connecting with each other. Not even just, it's beyond Black History Month now. It is pushing in every single direction for change and doing it together, doing it collectively. Never being alone again. That's the commitment for our community of educators. So shout out to Sarah Adamakowansa, and I have to say this as well because we're going to hold on to her as long as we can before she becomes the first Black female Prime Minister of Canada. That's the type of energy she brings to the game, and she's currently working with the Canadian Museum of Human Rights, and quite a few of us were able to get like new jobs, new opportunities on the strength of what we just decided to do shortly after the tragic events of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. So it's been a busy time, but it's been productive, it's been meaningful, and it's been everything that we've actually desired out of it and more. So blessings.
I love to hear that. And, you know, a question I always think about when I see the work being done, is the needle moving?
It's a big question that requires a big answer. But I don't think I'll provide a big answer. I'll just give a short one. The needle's moving, but we need more people to push that needle, period. And it ain't even a needle. It's like if this mic stand was like 7,000 pounds heavy, and there's a bunch of us really leaning on it as much as we can, and we're going as far as we can. But imagine if everybody was leaning in the same direction at the same time with the same force, all together. Then we could break down that door and finally start talking about, you know, what is education going to look like in the next year, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? What's it going to look like for my son and my daughter? Is it truly going to become inclusive? Are our jobs going to be truly equitable for all? I mean, it's great to have the holidays celebrated and this and that, but, you know, if we have schools named after Black people, Indigenous people, South Asian people, do we have the teachers that represent those communities that have that name? These are big questions. I think, honestly, at this point in time, it's groups such as ourselves, such as the Indigenous community of educators, anti-racism initiatives that are truly founded on the principles of anti-racism and not just branding or marketing or as one of my elder statesmen said, window dressing. It has to be more than that. It has to be, what are our practices? Are we actually holding ourselves accountable? And that's from the top down, bottom up, or outside in, inside out. So this is the level of commitment that we are engaged in right now as educators, as Black educators, but also as educators who understand that there's a lot of marginalized communities searching for different things in academia. And I forgot to even say this, like I'm pursuing a master's right now in educational policy studies, a specialization in social justice and international studies. And when I'm done that, I'll have a better feeling of where we are in terms of the work that we're doing with the Black Teachers Association of Alberta.
It's dope work. It's dope to see. First of all, before I continue, just tilt your mic towards you. This part, the top part.
Oh, like down?
Yeah, down. Yeah, so
Okay.
we catch everything. We
Perfect.
don't miss anything you're saying.
Right on.
I love that there's more initiative, more movements, more action towards making it, equitable on a policy level. Like you're trying to expect the schools and change in the education system, where I think it all starts from. We were talking earlier about how it's very difficult to change the status quo.
Status quo.
Especially when, how do you even define status quo?
Right. Who defined that? Who created that term? What's the synonymous term in multiple languages? If we're talking semantics, and we're going deep down the hole now, but what is considered normal is normal for whom? Mm-hmm. Right? In our community, what's normal is to have, if a parent's not involved, an uncle or an auntie or a community member to come support, an imam, a pastor, someone who's an esteemed elder to be there for that youth. What if a community was asking for that to be embedded into the system, and now it's the second year that they're asking for that same thing, and we're still hearing, we're collecting data, or we're searching for this, or we're in the stages of that. It's frustrating. But that being said, there are some strong warriors out there who are pushing for that change and pushing against the status quo, because they recognize that with the status quo, sometimes there's a lot of communities that are harmed by maintaining that, instead of trying to amend it. And when you amend it, what are you actually doing? You're showing growth. You're showing that education is evolving, that it's transforming. And shouldn't education be transformative? Right? Reading, writing, and arithmetic. That's what they told us when we was young. That's what you're going to get from education. Why not community building? Why not mental health? Why not addictions counseling? Why not have I wouldn't even call it interventions. Let's call it reconciliation related to the gang life that doesn't involve prison, law enforcement, carceral forms of engaging with communities. Can it be something that communities themselves decide upon? And could that be accepted? These are things that we're currently addressing and questioning the system and saying, do you have answers? Because we do. Are you willing to listen to ours? When they say yes, I'll be the first to come here on this podcast and say that, yeah, things are going in that direction. But as of right now, I'd say it's about 50-50, hit or miss. Depends on where you go, what city you're in, what community you're in, who's the superintendent or assistant superintendent, or who's the education minister for a given amount of time, who's in power in terms of politics. All those things play a major factor, but the community itself is still always going to desire what we've always desired, and that's representation. And I don't think we're going to stop until we get there.
Why do you think change is so hard to come by?
For some people, change is scary. But if you know that change is going to bring you to a better place as a community, as a society, what's there to be afraid of? Right? The water is always scary before you know how to swim, but once you put your feet in there, it gets a little easier. And then you put your knees, then you put your legs, you put your hands in there, and you splash around a little bit. You know your boundaries. You don't dip your chin until you're ready. Then you hold your head underwater for a little bit, and then you're like, wait a second, why don't I put my legs and my arms and my hands all together and navigate this new world and see how far I can get? Wait a second, maybe I can watch others who've done that before and follow some of their strategies, but incorporate some of my own. Imagine. Now take that analogy and apply that to education. We still have a lot of people looking at the water saying we can't swim. Even though there's some of us who were born in the water. So, and I don't know, that's like me as a kid from the Caribbean. Like you go back home, you swimming in the ocean, period. You gotta know, you gotta learn that thing. You get your feet wet in the sand, and you don't know it. Maybe you're gonna get swallow a little bit of water sometimes, but after that, you watch your OGs. They show you what to do. When you get in there, you change your own style. You navigate the water, and you teach someone else. We need people to not be afraid of the water, man. Got to get in there. You gotta get from island to island somehow, and it starts with just getting your feet wet.
Do you think we need? Well, I think the whole thing about representation is we need more of those teachers, more of those OGs, more of those people to say, hey, I know how to swim in the water.
Yeah.
I know how the water works. I know what's in there, you know, and I know some other guys too that know what the water's about.
Right. Literally, as a BTA, that's how we started. We reached out to every elder, and we said, what did you guys want 40 years ago? What did you ask for? And it was challenging because we found that we were asking for things right now in 2022 that they were asking for in the 1980s. So the one thing that you and I have talked about already is that this new generation, we have access to social media, to multiple platforms. I said to myself, in the 1980s, imagine if they had Instagram for our community. What could have happened? I mean, Rodney King was on TV, but that was like brought to you by NBC, ABC, or something. Imagine a community had a hold of that. Imagine they were able to do it in a responsible way. Imagine they were able to provide multiple perspectives and narratives related to that account. Imagine more people could speak about their own experiences about police brutality from that time, as opposed to just one story that's being shared around the world because it was caught on camera. Now we live in an era where everything happens all at once and you can get that information as soon as you want it. We just talked about this podcast, how literally the turnaround day could be tomorrow, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes. 30 years ago, we didn't have that. So what we're trying to do is take what the elders have asked, look at our own experiences, and then look at our babies. If our babies are still hearing certain words on the playground, or still being called this or that, or being equated to this animal or that animal, or if our teachers are being questioned based on the experiences they have or where they come from, we have to look at the system with no veil. Take the veil off and show us exactly who we are, and let's make it better.
I agree. I think that, I think we always talk about this generation, right? Young people and social media, and it's always negative. Anytime we talk about the new things of this generation, the capabilities of young people today,
Right.
People always talk about it in a negative connotation. But if you start to wrap your head around the fact that, okay, these kids have more access to information, more access to community, and I think that's one thing that we don't actually talk about a lot, is that before, without technology, your community was relegated to your neighborhood,
Right.
who lived across the street from you.
A newspaper, if you were lucky.
If
and
you're
we
lucky.
had one in our community. We had the Jamaica newspaper. We flew it out, and we'd be at one or two restaurants. And if we wanted to get the information about the community, we had to go to a restaurant. But that was good because it was like you had to be in that place. But now, if you pull up your phone, and these kids, I give them the utmost respect. So I have to give a shout out to the Black Student Association at Emile Lazare High School. These kids have showed me so much. They've expanded my mindset. They've shared stories, but they've empowered themselves. They've empowered themselves, obviously with a little bit of facilitation from me, but even without me, they're empowered beyond anything I could have ever done at 16 years old, 17 years old, 20 years ago. I think it's time for intergenerational work. I think it's, we can't put it in the hands of the elders. They're trying their best. We can't put it in the hands of my generation. You got kids, and we're trying to hold down the elders on ourselves. And we can't put it in the hands of the youth because that's just not fair. That's not fair to these kids, man. But imagine we just did it together and then presented our challenges, our solutions to other groups who are willing to listen. So I would say for the kids, I don't think what you're doing out there is overwhelmingly negative. I wouldn't even say it's like supremely negative. I would say that you guys are doing a very good job trying to navigate social media and the internet. And I would say you're doing a better job than a lot of us adults.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like you said an interesting word there. It's they're feeling empowered.
Yeah.
Right? They're feeling empowered, and they're taking things into their own hands because they have the access to the information. And young people nowadays are not ignorant.
Not at all.
They're not ignorant at all. They know exactly what's going on in the world. They know exactly how these systems work, you know, because they have such easily accessible information.
Right.
To understand the intricacies of society.
Right.
Of things that we had to read 4 or 5 books on before we could actually have an expert, not even an expert, a basic understanding of how it works. These kids can watch a 5-minute YouTube video that summarizes all this.
Right. They're on the cutting edge. And I remember when I first became a teacher, our school had a Twitter account. And the Twitter account, like, we were having some challenges engaging people. So at one point in time, I was brought on to be like the Twitter, what's the word? Twitter admin or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And I just used practices we use in the community online. And within like a couple of weeks, months, we went from like hundreds to thousands. But I remember in the initial stages, there was a lot of pushback because they were just like, well, what's the point of social media? What's the point of Twitter? What's the point? Oh, you made another post. That's great. And ha, 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 ha. In 1 year, that whole narrative changed because they recognized that this is a new way of empowering communities, schools, sharing voices, and providing parents with a glimpse of what their kids are going through on a daily basis. Think of every parent who was unable to go to like a basketball game or a recital or parent-teacher interviews or a field trip for whatever reason. We have kids in our community, their parents are working 2-3 jobs, night shifts, car driving services, in hospitals, custodial services, whatever. All they have to do now is go to that Instagram page of that school, and they can find like splinter Instagram groups. So you can go Lizard Social, Lizard Phys Ed, Lizard Athletics. You can find all that. You can watch the highlights of your kid anytime you want. We didn't have that years ago. So I think that this is a very positive thing, 100% a positive thing, but it just depends on the buy-in. And I think for a lot of people, they need to not be afraid of buying into some of these platforms because there are tons of positives that can come from this. Tons.
I agree. I think sometimes with, like you were saying, with change, we're so focused on the negative. You know, I know that from when I went to school, like school has changed completely. Right. You know, from funding to programming to sports to just even the demographic has changed completely, you know? And, you know, what you were saying about change being such a scary thing, you know, I think one of the things we've failed as a society to do is embrace change, is embrace that, okay, well, technology is advancing over here. Right. Okay, how is it going to help schools and students and parents and stay involved with the community, right? Like now we have communities, and this is what I love about the internet, is that you can find a group of people that have the same interests as you, same beliefs as you. They don't have to live in the same city as you, right? And that's, obviously there's good and bad. There's pros and cons to that. But you know, that changes down to the school level, you know, how students are interacting with each other now, right? Because they're not always searching for acceptance from their peers. They can go and say, okay, well, here's a group of people that see things the way I see it, and I can have discussions.
It's a support system.
Absolutely.
It's a support system. When we started Black Teacher Association, the number one thing we wanted was a space to meet each other. It was never provided before. Never. And that's not me taking a shot at any institution. That's not me taking a shot at my employer. That's not me taking a shot even at education. It's just the fact that folks didn't understand that we wanted to meet each other. We wanted to hear our experiences. And we also wanted an opportunity to share, like, hey, did you run into this challenge? What did you do? What was your strategy to address that challenge. Did a strategy work? If it didn't, what would you do the second, third time if it ever comes up? What advice would you give me as a new teacher coming into this game as a member of a BIPOC community? What advice would you give me, elders? And then for the kids, it's essentially them getting to see, well, wait a second, my teacher's not just the dude who taught me about Maximilian Robespierre or globalization or nationalism or internationalism or sovereignty and self-determination. This guy actually has a life, outside of education. He's got a family. He likes sports. Or, my sister Queen is involved with this community-led initiative called Cash Canada or Afro Quiz or the Canadian Museum of Human Rights. Letting kids see that you could be multidimensional is huge, because then they'll be like, well, I don't have to just focus on basketball or just focus on drama. I could be multiple things at once if I wanted to. And if I run into challenges in any of those other areas, here are some mentors readily accessible on this Instagram page. So we could do that. Obviously talking about BTA, but yourself, you're doing that right now. Bobby's doing that right now. Rochelle is doing that right now. Keenan is doing that right now. Like, everyone's just providing another access point for the community to build.
It's important, man. It's important to see yourself in different places, in different ways. I think I've said this 100 times, that everything comes back down to representation. And when you see yourself in a different light that you never may have imagined yourself before, especially if you see someone do it, there's power in seeing yourself as a teacher, as an educator, right? For another black kid, another BIPOC kid, to see that they can have that impact on their community. And it doesn't have to be with the basketball. It doesn't have to be with a microphone. It doesn't have to be on a television screen. It can be from something as accessible as a teacher, right? I always say teachers had the biggest impact on me growing up. There's teachers I could say that single-handedly saved my life, right? And they're a very, very important access point and contact point for kids growing up. You could say internet too, right? Because internet is, nobody knows what kids are doing on the internet. Nobody knows what adults, nobody knows what anybody's doing on the internet at any time. There's no way to really monitor that. But you want to make an impact, start at the first point of contact. And that's at schools. And now you guys have taken, the BTA has taken this support system, right? And made it accessible, right? Using social media, using technology. So not only are you making this accessible for students, right? But then other institutions can see, oh, okay, well, look at how they're using it.
There's been a lot of learning. There's been a lot of growing. There's been a lot of collaboration. So even like this year, we ran the first ever Black Student Association Summit. Because it was the pandemic, we had to do it online. But even though it was online, we had over 25 schools in Alberta represented, junior highs, high schools. We had the Black-owned market come in as a vendor. We had, we had Mayor Sohi pulled up. Mayor Sohi was in the building.
Shout out to Mayor
Sohi. He's always supported me from the beginning of time, even before he was the mayor. Solid person. We'd love to see on this podcast too, Mr. Sohi. So let's drop that seed right there. If you're listening, Mr. Sohi, come shout out to the Gifted Gab. It's up in the Northside way, and I love I know that you love Northside, so come on, visit us. Dave Shepard was in the building. Ahmed Nomadic was in the house. We did that grassroots. I got on the phone, like, okay, Ross Shepard, do you guys have a social justice group, anti-racism group, Black Student Association? Oh, you do? Okay, cool. We're putting this on. Do you know anybody else? They're like, yeah, let's holler at Victoria. Okay, call Victoria, Jason Edwards on the line, Misha. They say, yeah, we want to be involved. Who else can we get involved? Queen E. Call Queen Elizabeth, that's Northside. Okay, wait a second. There's another Northside school called Archbishop O'Leary. So then we hollered at our sister Akuya. She's out there, one of the only black teachers out there, and she brought her group. It was an anti-racism group, and we met each other online. We spent 2 hours talking about what it means to be from our community, 2 hours connecting, engaging with businesses and politicians and community leagues. At the end of it, all the kids took a picture, and then we streamed all the pictures from the BTA Instagram and sent the pictures to the kids so they could see the other groups in the city. And they all said, every one of them said, man, I don't feel as alone no more. I don't feel like we're just in this hub in our school. There's other kids doing what we want to do. There's other kids addressing what's happening in society. They talk about the same things: brutality, colorism, the N-word, differences in parental dynamics, educational experiences, career ambitions. So we made sure also to partner with every single university BSA as well. So we had McEwen, we had UVA, we reached out to Mount Royal, because we want those kids to see the trajectory of their own careers beyond just this experience that we had where we met people from Calgary, people from Catholic, public, private. We wanted them to have an opportunity to say, okay, well, maybe when I go to the city, I can connect with these youth. Maybe when I go to this university, I can meet with these people. Wait a second, that person was doing political science, or that person was doing, you know what I'm saying, acting or digital arts. I'm going to connect with them. This is organically done. And we've asked for this stuff for 1 billion times from various institutions, and it was always like, well, we don't got the money, we don't have this, we don't have the resources. So we're like, we'll do it ourselves. And that's the transformative point of education at this point in time. You got to do it ourselves until people understand that this is a need and that they should buy into it.
I 100% agree, and I think that's where the needle is moving, right? Is that, like you said, grassroots mobilization. You know, you guys are on the ground, and you guys are able to say, you know what, we're just going to take this into our own hands and figure it out ourselves. And usually, from what I've seen in my experience, those organic grassroots organizations and being able to mobilize like that, that's where the change comes from. Because up top, the corporates, the institutions, you know, all these structures that are already existing, they're just going with the status quo, right?
I have to say this because I've worked a couple of different jobs in the last 2 years, and I was able to see education from like 5 different directions: as a parent, as a teacher, as a consultant, as a member of the City of Edmonton's Anti-Racism Committee, and then also in my one-on-one interactions with my own community. And the biggest challenge we have addressed is obviously representation, but why aren't more people desiring the representation that we are asking for? It's only going to make education better. If we can speak English and French, why can't we not speak Cree or Somali or Swahili, you know, or Patois? Why can't we learn that in our schools? What's the downside? What's the downside? If everyone understands a few different languages, what's the downside? When I traveled overseas, everybody spoke at least 1 to 2, 3 different languages. They had to learn. And when they did, they had a different understanding of this world, a different understanding of what our commitment to the world is, to humanity. If we limit it just to 1 or 2 things, like math or a version of what English should be, English language arts should be, we're limiting experiences. We're limiting different understandings of human beings. So my suggestion to education is to broaden your understanding, broaden your horizons, introduce new things, tell different stories. You know, we are Canada, but we were also Turtle Island. And that's something I personally myself, as you know, a child of newcomers who is now starting to understand a lot about our Indigenous communities, that you know, they've been asking for a whole lot. I mean, the Pope is here today.
Today.
That started because a lot of people started speaking up and saying, look, come visit and see what it is and hear what we went through. Because for how many years, century, people said we were lying about residential schools. That's what my Indigenous family been telling me, that they would explain their experience, what they went through. And people would be like, nah, man, they would never do that. So now, with so many people on social media saying, look, physical assault, sexual assault, discrimination, harm, verbal abuse, this was my kukum, this was my Muslim, this was my mom, my dad, this is my grandma, my grandpa. These are the effects that we're still going through right now. The Pope being here, it's an indication that there's going to be more people coming back to this country to address what's happened here. And if not just Canada, or Turtle Island, as I call it, United States of America too.
In your opinion, do you think that, obviously we've gotten, by telling the stories and giving the platform to hear what was happening with the Truth and Reconciliation
Right.
Act and things of that nature, do you think the Catholic Church is going to take responsibility for what was going on? Do you think that they're going to make amends? What in your opinion, the Pope being here,
Right.
starting his tour and whatever,
Right.
do you think it's just a beginning? Do you think it's just
This is something for me personally, as an observer and obviously an educator, that I don't think we'll know until our Indigenous fam tells us. The Indigenous fam went through all of that, still going through it. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like for the Black community, when we collectively feel that things have shifted in a direction. Are there jobs available? Are there more social services? Have we addressed racism effectively? For each independent community, they will make that decision as well. A visit is a visit. That's great. What else? What else? Right? Let's say it's some type of a crime happened and it was wrongful imprisonment. The person gets out of prison, but they lost how many years of their life?
Time is...
Right?
Yeah.
So it wouldn't just be to acknowledge the fact that we made a mistake and we bring this person back. It's to look at the current system and say, how are we currently perpetuating the challenges that happened 30 years ago right now? Do the same for residential schools. Do the same for the incarceration of Indigenous people and Black people. Do the same for missing and murdered Indigenous women. Do the same. Look back and say, okay, we did it this way. We amended it. We apologized. What are we doing now to change it? Period.
It's deep, man. It's deep, and it takes a lot of work. And I think, we got to decolonize.
It's like my whole studies right now in social justice, and about 8 of the different courses that I took, we talked about decolonization and even decolonialism. Right, so we're dealing with an action, we're dealing with an ideology, we're dealing with a system, we're dealing with practices. Some of the practices, some folks don't even understand that they're perpetuating, but that doesn't take you out of the responsible and accountable role. You need to acknowledge it. So my way of acknowledging it is simple. As I go up to people and be like, in education, okay, how many Indigenous teachers do we have right now? How many Black teachers do we have? How many food opportunities do we have for South Asian communities? How much of an international influence do we see in the curriculum? How many people are addressing the gaps in the curriculum publicly that are in positions of power or authority, and not just brave educators going to their social media platforms and saying it because they're waiting to hear it from somewhere else? Who's currently contesting some of the politicians that may not be addressing some of the gaps in education? Even addressing that there are gaps in education is troublesome. It's dangerous as an educator to do, because somebody could say, well, wait a second, we can't have this person working here, because then the kids are going to start to question everything. But suppose you didn't just say question everything, you said question everything from a humanitarian perspective. Then things make sense.
Speaking to Mike, yeah.
Sorry, fam.
No, you good. It's true, thinking about it, and you hit it right on the nail. It's the questions, It's being comfortable to ask the questions, and being comfortable to say, okay, and think critically and say, okay, well, this is not working. This isn't working. Okay.
Got you right there. This is perfect. There's a difference between operating and working. Machines can operate anytime they want. Anytime. But what does working look like? If there's a group of people that are continually being harmed or misrepresented or silenced to compromise for the quote-unquote majority, is it a system that's operating or working? And that's something I actually pose in a lot of my studies, is when I read everything that's happening in education around the world, not just Canada, not just United States, not just United Kingdom, or where the majority of some of these studies come from, operation versus working. For our community, working is saving lives. Saving lives, period. So until it gets to that point of working, then maybe we're just operating. We should consider other channels.
And then you also have to ask, what is the intention of these systems, right? I think that's one thing we don't really. I think we talked about it summer of 2020 a little bit,
right?
But I don't think we've ever really addressed. We do have these systems and they're operating. What is their intention, right? What is their primary goal, right? Because like we were just saying about the university system, which is a colonial system, it's a European framework for educating, but there's money involved, which means capitalism is involved, which means that to become operational, you got to be making money, which means to make money, you got to charge fees. To charge fees, you got to have tuition.
And then who is not getting access to some of these institutions as a result of their not having the capacity to pursue funds to enter into these programs that even then sometimes are very elitist. And then once the people are successful in elite institutions, are they speaking their voices or are they speaking the voice of the institution? It's challenging. These are conversations we need to have. Like the conversation we're having right now should be had in every single university and every single high school. And then, when the youngsters in elementary start thinking a little bit critically too, they should question certain things and not be afraid to. And have a teacher who's able to engage in a conversation and show multiple perspectives and not just the perspective that they were told to tell or that they believe in themselves. So I personally believe that the intent needs to be clear, but if the intent is harmful, change the intent altogether and start from scratch. And whatever, if you have money, you'll find a way to put it into something to make it good for everybody. So
absolutely. Before, I think it was last year, there was talks about a new curriculum here in Alberta. I wanted to ask you what your opinion was on that.
I gave a very good interview to a high school in Edmonton, Lillian Osborne. I believe it was during Black History Month. And in the interview, I had some choice things to say about the curriculum because I was asked a point blank question. It was like, do you believe that the curriculum currently adequately addresses the experiences, the history, let's say highlights of the Black community? And I said no. Point blank. Got in a little trouble for that.
Really?
Yeah. Well, some people were just like, well, you got to be careful. What you say, you're a teacher and this and that. But then I said, well, wait a second. Before I ever got a degree and before I ever got a contract, before I ever went to school, I was born like this. And this contributes to my understanding of my reality, of society and of the world. Now, there's ways that I can introduce things as a teacher that could share multiple perspectives and be vastly different from the curriculum. But I'm one Black teacher in a school of 2,000. And for many of us, that's the case. We're one or two in a school of 1,000 or 2,000. And the hope is that a lot of people would advocate for more voices, but it's very easy just to be like, okay, well, this is the textbook and this is what we're teaching. But when you do that, I mean, if it has a particular lens, for instance, a Eurocentric lens, and you do that for, 10, 15 years of your career, that's a lot of kids believing that one narrative is the only way to exist in this world. So what I try to do is very conscious in my room is show multiple perspectives. Hey, young girl who wears a hijab, you can do anything you want. Hey, young child who identifies as to us LGBTQ, you can be whoever you want. Hey, Black kid from Nigeria, from Ghana, from Botswana, from Zimbabwe, from Tanzania, from Somalia, from Jamaica, Trinidad, or Guyana, or Barbados, or Bahamas. Guess what? You fit into this society. Let's find out how. As a matter of fact, you're transforming society. Let's show you how. Those are conversations you got to have in social studies classes, in my opinion. Abstractly restating facts from history, a predominantly Eurocentric history, there's a purpose for that, but there's also a purpose in understanding world history, and understanding that there were different names for Canada before they became Canada. There's a different name for United States before they even the 13 colonies. There's a different name even long before that. Let's talk about those stories. And it gives us context. And then we better understand our brothers and sisters that are walking down the streets every single day. Mm-hmm. Period.
Absolutely. I mean, I think at the end of the day, you can root, our when we talk about decolonizing, right? It's rooted in a certain ideology, in a certain belief. Multiple, right? Not to say that those beliefs are wrong. Mm-hmm. It's to say that there's more than one perspective, right? So why is it that we just assume that this is the only way to live and this is what holds up that status quo, right? When you start to incorporate all the other beliefs, all the other religious components, all the other, groups of people that have occupied this land way before anybody else came in here, right? And you start to actually think critically about who is telling us or who is teaching us these things that we're supposed to know, right? Where is it coming from, right? You start to deconstruct that, and then you start to realize, okay, well, you know what? For me, personally, from all the history and all the things I've learned and thought, I've come to one conclusion. It's that the only religion and ideology to follow is the one of humanity, right? Mm-hmm. It's that there's brothers and sisters, and they might have different skin colors, they may have different beliefs, they may have different whatever, but we're all human. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, that should be that. It doesn't matter if this guy is working here or is falling on hard times and is struggling. It's still a human across from you.
Absolutely. And I think that's like the takeaway for teachers and students and parents and community members. I'm even just thinking about like the tournament that we're running here. We essentially saw a need in the community, and the community was so multi-ethnic, so multi-religious, multi-orientation, multicultural, and there was a need, and it was a human need. We weren't just there to serve the black kids only. We weren't just there to serve the Muslim kids only. We weren't just there to serve the Northside kids only. It was like, hey guys, we have an event. We want you to come and have fun. Have fun, play the game you love. We'll make it ultra special for every single one of you. Guess what? Bring your grandparents. Let your mom come in the lawn chair. Come and sit down. You want to talk to the director? Talk to the director. You want to talk to the people who are giving you food, like burgers and dogs and stuff? Talk to them. Guess what? Oh my God, there's that teacher from Rochelle. Oh, there's that teacher from O'Leary. There's that teacher from Harry Ainley. Oh, there's that kid who signed to go play at Concordia. Oh, there's that guy who played for Concordia. You know what I mean? There's that University of Alberta guy. What's his name again? Oh, that's right, Sarasapa. That's right. Who's the other guy? Oh, that's Matt Cardosa. That's right. Wait a second. Who the handsome brother? That's Andre Kelly.
Shout out my guy Andre.
So
Kelly.
Andre, you know what I mean? When the kids get to see everybody just enjoying the game that they love, those are things that schools can do anytime. Like last semester was a rough one. Like I'm wearing these shades right now. I hurt my eye actually. There's an accident at our school, and I had some big conversations with my principals and with my staff about things that we can do to make situations better. And one of them was just like, let's be more inclusive. If the kids want to do something, let's find a way to make it work. Let's bring their parents in. Let's support them. But again, like I hate to put that all on a teacher or two teachers or three teachers or four teachers. This is something that as a system of education, we need to reevaluate and reflect and try our very hardest to incorporate, to bring us into the future and then the future of the future. Period.
We got to invest in the future, right? I think we
100%.
got to always do whatever we can to make sure that tomorrow is better than today. And that comes by investing in people, investing in community, providing the resources, providing the individuals to come in these places and just make change. Mm-hmm. And you brought up the tournament.
Yes, sir.
Let's talk about the tournament.
Let's talk business now.
Pride of the Northside.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Year 13. Talk to us, man. What's happening? August 13th and 14th.
We man, COVID-19 hit everybody differently. For our tournament, we had a lot of kids in my community, particularly North Edmonton and Emmy Lizard, that were not well physically, mentally as well. There were some challenges that came with COVID, and in that first year during COVID, we decided that we were going to pause. The second year, we were ready to go, but then we heard some news that around the summertime, it was like you can't have more than 20 or 50 people at certain events, so you had to shut down a second year. This year is our first year back since COVID-19. And with this year, it's really special because we're getting a lot of the sponsors back, a lot of the teams back, and a lot of the community members back. So August 13, 14, we're going to have a slam dunk competition, 10-foot and 9-foot three-point competition for the youngsters and the OGs. Got tons of prizes for the kids. We're going to have our first ever Pride of the North community market. Shout out to Man Bars and, big up him and the amazing company you guys got here, as well as Gifted Gab. And we're just bringing the community together, giving us another opportunity to play the game that we love, and also to get back to that feeling of summer events in our city. And it started with Klondike Days and Taste of Edmonton, and Cara West will be the week before Pride North. We never conflict with them because that's my community. I never step on toes. But August 13, 14, I want to see every single person in the city come down and support. And there's like spectators, anybody can come just have fun and show love to these kids.
Well, you guys hear it here first, man. Pride of the Northside, we back August 13th and 14th. Let them know where we can find you, man. Tell us where we can follow the work of the Black Teachers Association, where we can keep up with any news if we wanted to sign up for the Pride of the Northside. I was about to say Black Teachers Association.
Both.
Maybe that too.
Both. Just go to @AndrewParkerAGP on Twitter and Instagram, and then just go #Pride North, or go to www.andrewgparker.com. It's the hub for like BTAs, the hub for the basketball camps, and as well as the Pride of the North. Registration deadline is, I believe, the 11th, because we got to make a schedule so y'all can play your games. So please, please, please sign up, register. And it's open to everyone across the city. It's not just the North. We're just our gracious hosts, and we want to see your beautiful faces. So moms, dads, kids, brothers, sisters, he, she, they, them, everybody come through. We love you. Come and support the North.
We're going to be there. We're going to be in the cut. You guys know how we do. Just like that, man. We got Andrew Parker here from the Black Teachers Association, Pride of the Northside. Thank you so much for coming here, man. Really appreciate when you're here on the show. We're going to have you a few more times.
Appreciate you, my king. And shout out to everybody that worked on this amazing episode today. I love all y'all. Y'all are the best. Peace and love, Edmonton. You don't know.
Just like that, we gone.